Well, hello, everyone. Welcome. And thank you all for joining us today to hear about the Creating Our Future art exhibit in the former Jackson Park in Alameda. Last July, Amy Wooldridge, the director of Alameda's Recreation and Parks Department, first contacted Rhythmix about collaborating on a temporary art exhibit in the former Jackson Park, right after the park was denamed due to the many atrocities of President Andrew Jackson. So taking inspiration from the community support of the West End Arts District's Healing Garden and Black Lives Matter memorial artwork that was featured in the Taylor Webster Street lot on the West End, we started sharing ideas about ways this exhibit could honor Black cultures and communities as well. We asked the award-winning artist Stephen Bruce to curate this installation, and he in turn invited the amazingly talented artists that you will hear from today. Rhythmix in-house technician and woodworker extraordinaire, Mark Ribot, came up with a number of very ingenious designs for the installation, and we are grateful that he was able to integrate all the artwork and has installed it just this past Monday. So the project took about 3 months from start to finish. We would like to thank the City of Alameda and the California Arts Council Creative California Communities for making this project possible. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce Rashid Shabazz, a local historian, scholar, journalist, storyteller, educator, and city planning master's student at UC Berkeley. Rashid is a member of the Rename Jackson Park, an anti-racist collective focused on education and the removal of white supremacist symbols from public spaces. He is also writing a book about race and housing and their impact on the experiences of African Americans in Alameda. Thank you, Rashid, for sharing your perspectives and updates with regard to the park's renaming effort with us today.
Peace be and peace be with you all. Thank you for the opportunity to share history and our story today. So just setting up my screen. So the title of my presentation today is called A History of the Park, formerly known as Jackson Park. And I'm really just grateful to be in this space today to be able to share some of this history. So a month before Jackson Park opened in 1909, the Alameda Daily Argus reported that the Parks and Playground Commissioner, Fred Delanoy, was highly indignant. He said, "There's a gang of bad boys generally raising Cain at Jackson Park. The children climbed trees and they broke limbs." And Delanoy said, "We are now starting on a new era of beautification of the streets and parks of this city. And it is the intention of the commission to obtain a uniformity of all trees throughout the city. Alameda is in truth the city beautiful. And now that we are beautifying the city in a matter of planting trees and shrubs and trimming the overhanging branches, it seems an outrage that these depredations should be allowed." Delanoy asked the police to help the commission to put a stop to this wholesale mutilating of trees in the parks and elsewhere. He evoked the City Beautiful movement while simultaneously expressing his intention to use law enforcement to regulate the public behavior of children. Most of the histories of the park formerly known as Jackson Park focus on physical attributes, trees, the surrounding homes, but this conflict between city officials and young people foreshadows the ongoing struggle of who and what belongs here at that park and in the city of Alameda. So today I'm going to highlight some park folklore, share a social and political history of the park, and contextualize the effort to rename Jackson Park. Now, although we call this Island Alameda, which is Spanish for a promenade of trees or a mall of trees, we live on unceded land formerly and currently occupied by the Ohlone people. The first Europeans that colonized the area were Spanish conquistadors, followed by other settlers, us forced migrants, and other immigrants. And so before we begin, let's acknowledge the Ohlone people who are still here. Now, this park is a site of myth and folklore. As I said, most histories focus on historical preservation. And now, although it's popular believed that our first park was named Alameda Park, I've not yet encountered evidence that the city ever formally adopted any name for the park until 1909. Historian Woody Minor writes that Alameda's first private resort opened in 1865. The San Francisco and Alameda Railroad called it the Alameda Park Hotel. 2 years later, the hotel became an insane asylum, while the railroad company subdivided the land as the Alameda Park Tract, which was renamed the Alameda Park Homestead in 1874. Homeowners there reserved the oval green space in the subdivision for themselves. Between 1889 and 1894, the city used various legal mechanisms, including condemnation, to open a public park at the site. The park officially opened on the 4th of July in 1895 and was variantly called the City Park, the Park on Park Ave, and Alameda Park. In 1909, the city opened 3 new parks and named them after U.S. presidents. According to the San Francisco Call newspaper, the old park on Park Ave that was generally known as the City Park will hereafter be known as Jackson Park. It's unclear why officials specifically chose to honor Andrew Jackson, the 7th president. Delanoy, the president of the Parks and Recreation Commission, said, "The desire of the Playground Commission in bestowing the names of presidents on the parks is to inspire the school children with the achievements and deeds of these illustrious men." Officials also plan to erect statues of each man at the parks, and that would also be Washington, Lincoln, and McKinley. And for over 100 years, Alameda honored Andrew Jackson, the 7th president of the U.S., enslaver of Africans, Indian killer, with a park. Now, why hadn't people critiqued Andrew Jackson's legacy earlier? Perhaps it's because most of the written histories about Alameda focus on architectural preservation and the narrative and legacy of the city and beaches and homes. And the artifact and environmental preservation efforts also reinforce the vision of history. Besides trees, historical preservation efforts at the park have focused on 3 cultural artifacts that humans have erected at the park: the bandstand, the flagpole, and a bench. Residents erected the bandstand in 1890, and by 1960, the bandstand was in poor conditions. Throughout its history, according to the Alameda Museum Quarterly, there was a problem with mischievous children throwing ropes around the finial and climbing on the roof. The finial is atop the bandstand. In 2002, the bandstand was restored and the finial in the Alameda Museum was replicated. Officials also erected a 150-foot tall flagpole in 1895 for the park opening ceremonies, or the Liberty Pole. In the 1980s, when workers removed the pole, an Alameda firefighter rescued the finial from workers who were removing the flagpole. He donated it to the Alameda Museum in 2017. And in 1920, resident Isabel Clark donated a bench at the south end of the park. Now, some people associate the bench there with Alamedan Jim Morrison of the Doors, but in fact, Clark donated that bench and a fountain in memory of her husband. The inscription, "Dumb Friends," is a reference to animals. Now, preservationists had written about the park's history and the name, restored historical features, but never discussed Andrew Jackson, the namesake's racist legacy, or even how people have used the park over time. Now, tensions over how the park should be used reveal some underlying conflicts over who and what belong at the park. Does it belong to the people who live around it on Park Avenue, to children, or to residents at large in Alameda or the Bay Area? Now, these debates have played out publicly in different conversations about children's play structure, traffic regulations, policing, and the debates about historical preservation. About a year ago, in July 2019, the Parks and Recreation staff hosted a neighborhood meeting regarding adding a play area at the park. Participants were equally in support and in opposition of adding a children's play area. Some residents expressed concerns ranging from wanting to provide space for families and potentially deterring less desirable behaviors, to concerns about parking, children's safety, and vandalism. But this wasn't the first time Alameda's debated this question about whether or not there should be a park or play area at the park for children. In 1922, the PTA, or the Parent Teachers Association of Porter School, petitioned for the erection of a playground at the park. 86 owners along Park Avenue, along with the Alameda High PTA, opposed the proposal, and ultimately the city council denied it. And in 1929, the Porter PTA again petitioned for the use of Jackson Park for playground purposes. The city council unanimously denied the petition. After World War II, in the 1950s, residents debated traffic regulations as a way to control behavior at the park. In 1953, residents worried that the street was too narrow for parked cars on both sides, prohibiting parking. According to the residents, they were concerned about the possibility of children being struck by a car because they're darting out between parked cars. Park residents supported prohibiting parking, but would fight any attempt to cut into the park for parking purposes. In 1957, the city introduced an ordinance to create one-way streets on Park Avenue. Property owners opposed banning parking as it would, quote, adversely affect the rental income of said owners because there would not be adequate parking facilities for their tenants. As with many issues in Alameda, issues of traffic and public safety ultimately revert back to issues of rents and property values. In 1979, the Reverend Russell Palmer of First Christian Church was apparently attacked at the park. His congregation petitioned the city council for improved protection of citizens in the Jackson Park area. Their demands included closing the park for young people or people under between the ages of 14 and 30 and restricting parking. In the aftermath, other proposals included making Alameda High, the nearby high school, a closed campus, meaning that students couldn't leave campus for lunch, and also instituting a public drinking ordinance. One Park Avenue resident proposed the use of volunteer citizens as special deputies that would observe and report to the police. And finally, parking regulations were also proposed to address public safety concerns. So park issues shifted to restricting youth mobility, deputizing private citizens to control public space, and regulating who could access the park. In 2014, there was a debate over the removal of the Clark Memorial Bench, and that highlights some of these same conversations about youth, crime, preservation, and memory. In 2014, January 2014, a windstorm knocked down a palm tree on the bench. City officials proposed removing the significantly damaged bench. Some park neighbors associated it with crime and public nuisances and called it a magnet for bad behavior. Others said the bench should be considered a historical landmark. One couple advocated for the restoration of the bench and keeping it as a place for generations of young people to gather. The latest in this bench saga reflects a greater history of people's experiences at this park. The space has been a gathering place for hundreds of people for over a century. Now, the city can maintain the park physically, but the memories we all have, they can't be documented, cataloged, or preserved completely. Changing the name of the park will neither erase the history or remove those memories, but renaming the park provides an opportunity for new memories and new meanings of that space. Now, Rename Jackson Park is rooted in a global effort to remove symbols of white supremacy, Confederate flags, monuments, place names honoring white supremacists, colonizers, and so-called slave owners from public spaces. In March 2015, South African students called for the removal of Cecil Rhodes, his statue, from the University of Cape Town. That same month, the Black Student Union at UC Berkeley called for renaming Charles Barrows Hall to Assata Shakur Hall. And in June 2015, Bree Newsom removed the Confederate flag in South Carolina, just the same month actually, after a white supremacist murdered 9 churchgoers in Charleston. Now, the election of Donald Trump led to a growing recognition of white supremacy and the local acknowledgement of racism in Alameda. A turning point was the August 2017 Unite the Right rally to protest the removal of the Robert E. Lee statue in Charlottesville, Virginia. Alamedans protested in response to violence in Virginia, but also local incidents of anti-Blackness and anti-Semitism in the schools. The East Bay Express newspaper did a series on local monuments, but didn't include Alameda. So I created a list. And on December 5th, 2017, 150 years after Governor Henry Huntley Haight gave a racist inauguration speech, I contacted the PTA and the principal at Haight Elementary School and encouraged them to start the process to rename Haight. And in the context of renaming Haight, we brought forward the call to rename Jackson Park. Now, despite this increase in consciousness of racism in Alameda, rename Jackson Park faced opposition. In 2018, I wrote the Recreation and Parks Commission, encouraging them to rename Andrew Jackson Park to Justice Park. And I said, hey, you know, Jackson enslaved Africans and he supported the forced removal of Native Americans. Why do we have a park in Alameda named after Andrew Jackson? Now, other communities had denamed places and events honoring Jackson. Renaming the park could be a move towards justice, but Alameda, and I said Alameda shouldn't honor him. And one park commissioner called historical facts about Jackson opinionated history and expressed concern that renaming the park might hurt the feelings of Jackson's descendants. He didn't express any concern about the people enslaved or displaced by Jackson. And the publishers of the local newspaper, the Alameda Sun, wrote that the call to rename the park was presentism, or judging those in the past by current values. In 2018, less than 200 people had signed our petition. Ultimately, it took a global anti-racist movement to give momentum to the local effort to rename the park. The murder of George Floyd restarted the effort to rename Jackson Park. In June 2020, Recreation and Parks Commissioner Amy Barnes called for the renaming of Jackson Park to be revisited. We mobilized our original group and we got over 1,000 other people to sign the petition within a few weeks. After dozens spoke out at the commission and the council meetings in July, both boards voted unanimously to dename Jackson Park, remove the sign, and adopt a community process to choose a new name. We still hope to get support for our third demand, a memorial for the people oppressed by Andrew Jackson. Now that Alameda denamed the park, we have an opportunity to create something better. A renaming committee has solicited names in October and will soon make a recommendation to the Recreation and Parks Commission. In soliciting names, the committee said, we are seeking a park name that reflects inclusion, diversity, and equity of the entire community of Alameda and which represents social justice, human rights, and/or anti-racism. Local histories about the park formerly honoring Andrew Jackson have ignored the namesake's legacy of racism, just as many people have ignored Alameda's own local history of racism. The conflicts over land titles and play structures for children evoke deeper conversations about land values and really who belongs at the park and who the park belongs to. Considering Alameda's history of exclusion and displacement, naming Alameda's first park after a white supremacist that enslaved, killed, and sold Black people and killed and stole land from indigenous people, it perhaps fit for 100 years. But boosted by a global movement, renamed Jackson Park revealed what this name really represented, a century of racism in Alameda. By highlighting this hidden history, renamed Jackson Park has initiated an act of anti-racism and an opportunity to heal the wounds of racial trauma. Now, renaming Jackson Park is just the tip of the iceberg of systemic racism in Alameda, and symbolic. Since renamed Jackson Park emerged, other efforts have too. Renaming Calhoun Street, named after the slavery proponent John C. Calhoun, and renamed Godfrey Park. Former Alameda Mayor Milton C. Godfrey helped initiate racial segregation in Alameda's wartime projects. So renaming Jackson Park is an opportunity for healing and facing Alameda's history of racism, restrictive covenants, zoning, redlining, segregation, real estate steering, and racially biased policing. We cannot claim that everyone belongs without addressing the long history of exclusion here. So whether it's parks named after racists like Jackson or Godfrey, or exclusionary zoning from the city charter, Alameda must remove white supremacist symbols and tools from public space. And only through truth and reconciliation can we truly create a community of belonging. In 2014, a Park Avenue resident who hoped to remove the Clark bench said, "A park is not a museum. Like all of Alameda, the park is in a constant state of evolution." I partially agree. The identity of the park and who and what belongs is in a constant redefinition and ongoing debate. But I disagree that the park is not a museum. This park is a living museum, and our experiences are the most valuable artifacts. And as we consider or reconsider its history, we don't erase memories. No history can capture the diverse memories and experiences in a space long formerly known as Jackson Park. This space means different things to different people. Alameda needs more preservation of our stories, stories that tell the diverse histories of Alameda, not just those that glorify the Victorian era of homes and resorts for rich white folk. This installation is an opportunity for a deeper conversation about Alameda's past, present, and future. But it's not a blank slate. The name we choose for our first park represents our island and our vision for our health, our environment, and our public spaces. There's an opportunity to create our future, and I hope we choose wisely. Thank you.
Thank you, Rashid. We appreciate that very comprehensive history that you put together for us today. Also joining the conversation today will be Alameda's Vice Mayor, John Knox White, one of our city council members who was ready to rid the park of its signage and with a giant saw after it was unanimously denamed. Thank you, John, for being here with us today and sharing the perspective from the city on the future of Alameda.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Rashid for that fabulous presentation. So I was asked to talk a little bit about why the city and the city council took the action to dename Jackson Park. And I think Rashid's presentation does a fabulous job of expressing one part of I think what the council discussed, which is we have an opportunity, and it's limited to honor and reflect important people, activities, events, and ideas in the way that we name our public places. And I think that there is always, the naming of space is an ongoing and living process. And thanks to Mr. Shabazz bringing this forward, our community decided that Andrew Jackson does not reflect the current ethics and morals of our community. I think another very important aspect of naming public places is that it is a way to reflect to our present and future community who lives here, who belongs here, and Rashid spoke about that. I was lucky enough to sit through a technical run on Wednesday for this program, and you've heard some of the artists that we're going to hear from in a few minutes, and I just was so struck by the kind of their commentary and their process in designing their artworks, and how that really does overlay with the idea of how can we use the name of this park, Alameda's first park, to really reflect a space that does help us along the process of ensuring that everybody belongs here and that everybody feels welcome, safe, and a part of our community in Alameda. So I'm going to not speak. I'm the politician here, so I'm not going to speak for too long, because there are many more interesting and fabulous speakers ahead. But I am just so thankful to our community for their strong support for really looking at this issue. I'm so thankful to Rhythmix for partnering with the city. I was really grateful that our council decided to really ask our staff to use, that sign came down within days of our denaming Jackson Park, and we knew we were going to have 6 to 9 months before we had a new name. And so our city council asked the city staff to look for a way to reflect what was happening. So we didn't just have a dead space that was out there, and to really put something out there that causes some thought about names and what they reflect and how they interact. And I'm so proud of the work that all these artists have done in reflecting these values and these ideas. They're very beautiful, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Mayor John Knox White. And I think you represent part of the positive change going on in Alameda and hopefully everywhere else. So thank you. I'm Janet Koika, the founder of Rhythmix Cultural Works, and I am so happy that artists have been brought the artist's voice has been brought to this important moment for the community. And so I would like to thank the city for considering that, because the artist's voice is something pretty special and should be heard. I have the honor of introducing the curator, Stephen Bruce, and the artists. I asked Stephen to curate this show because I knew he was connected to just the right artist and somehow would bring the vision to life. Each artist's voice is unique and clear, and how they've addressed the theme of creating our future. Not only did Stephen do an amazing job of selecting artists, he also gave of his time very generously, and I saw him acting as a mentor to younger artists, which is a really special thing to see. I got to see the artwork for the first time in person on Wednesday, the day after Election Day, a very tense day. And seeing work that was so strong and filled with the vision of a better future brightened my spirits and got me through that day. So I would like to thank all of the artists for giving me hope. And I'm serious, I held on to the images of these paintings all day, and they gave me hope that we can make things better. So thank you for that. I asked Stephen to be one of the artists because he's wonderfully talented and his work is both bold and sublime. He uses a sort of alchemy to create his work, and I'm sure you will enjoy hearing him speak about it. Stephen. Stephen, you need to unmute yourself if you're speaking.
Yeah, let's see. Here we go. All right. I want to thank Janet and Rhythmix for asking me to curate the project. It was the first time that I've curated a public art project, and so I was a little apprehensive, but I was pretty confident about the artists that I would select and how they would, pretty much show me the light. And so I decided to select artists that I was associated with through Art of the African Diaspora. And I'm going to list them by name, Abi Mustapha, Zoe Boston Brown, Tiffany Conway, Andrea McCoy Harvey, and Ashlei Reign. I particularly focused on some younger artists because I wanted to see their vision, and I knew each one of these ladies were amazingly creative and would bring life to the project. So my work itself is actually I'm painting with acid on copper, and one of my favorite things to do is to create horizons, sunsets, in particular Bay Area sunsets. The title of my piece is called Crown Park Sunset. And I kind of wrestled with what I wanted to create for this project for a good moment. But I kept coming back to the sunsets from Alameda. And what resonated to me was, as a younger man, my sister who lived in the Bay Area would always tell me that you get out of Alameda before night. That there's a good chance you would get pulled over. And even though that doesn't seem like long ago, I mean, that was in the 90s. And, but it was an urban myth that kind of exists. And even to this day, I will hear people say, you get pulled over in Alameda while driving while black. So that kind of kept me from enjoying sunsets in Alameda. And I would typically go to the Oakland Marina instead of going to Alameda to take pictures of sunsets. But the name of this, the theme of this was creating our future. And I just thought of the things that we should be able to access, that everybody should be able to access. And so just having a future where every space is safe and people are welcome. And again, I wanted to capture what I experience when I go to the park there and take pictures of sunsets. So. And that is it.
Stephen, would you like to introduce the other artists?
I would. So I'm actually I have a little order here, but I'm going to start off with Abi Mustapha, and I wanted to say a few things about Abi. Abi is a 2019 Art of the in the Diaspora Creative Excellence Award winner. She was the lead curator for the Santa Cruz Black Lives Matter mural that just happened just past summer. In 2021, Abi has a show at the Santa Cruz Museum of Art and History. Abi Mustapha.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Yep.
Am I muted?
You're there.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen. So my piece, specifically, I did a piece on boys. My work tends to focus on women. I do a lot of drawings of women, large scale drawings. And this is a piece that I started years ago. I started the drawing and then I put it away and was waiting for the right time to kind of finish it or work on it. And that, when I think of a park, I think of young people. And when I think of when I hung out at a park more than today, like I walk my dog and stuff, but you know, it was all the way from being a very little kid with my parents up through high school. And even in college, that's where I would like meet my friends to go on walks, to check in, things like that. And by focusing on boys in this picture, that's kind of what came to my mind right now, this pervasive issue that we've been having forever, really, especially with young Black men being, young Black boys being identified as men too soon, and even teenagers and adolescents. And so that's what came to my mind when I thought of a park. And this piece I had been working on really called to me that this was something that I wanted to show is boys in their innocence. And if I could somehow elicit that from people when they see this piece, to see a group of boys ages 9 to 14 as boys, and to remember that like there's this huge period of time where they're children, they're teenagers, they're preteens, and that there's all these spaces in between where young men especially they're still boys, they're still children. And even when they're teenagers, they're not men, they're not adults. The same thing for women. But that was something that I really wanted to elicit with this piece, was the innocence of boyhood. And I thought, especially for a park, a place where young people gather, where everybody gathers, but especially young people should be gathering and enjoying themselves in the outdoors. That was something that really came to my mind that I wanted to highlight in this. And really, I wanted to look at it for myself, because I do tend to focus most of my work on women. And so that's what this piece meant to me. And that's why it felt right for this specific project. So that's kind of where this piece came from. The boys pictured in this piece, it's actually from a photograph that was taken in my dad's village in Sierra Leone, West Africa. And these are all school children, ages 9 to 14. And so it felt good also to include that in this cultural intertwining with the park too. So this piece is paper on wood panel, and there's also acrylic paint and graphite and a little bit of black oil paint. That's it.
Thank you. Stephen, would you continue introducing the other artists? Are you there?
Yeah. So let me introduce Zoe Boston Brown. Zoe is the 2019 Art of the African Diaspora Artistic Achievement Award winner. She currently has work at the De Young Museum. She is creating a mural for the 2020 Black Woman is God exhibit that is currently opened in San Francisco. She has national mural credits to her name, and she is also an acclaimed vocalist. Zoe Boston Brown. Do we have Zoe?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can't hear you anymore, Zoe. I think you hit your mute button.
Unmute. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, awesome. So my piece is called Breath of Life. And I wanted to show through this piece just the importance of using your voice, and also to illustrate that everyone has this power of their voice to use, whether good or bad, to change their environments, to create new, um, whether good or bad. And that power is something that needs to be cultivated within ourselves, so we can literally speak to our environments and make a difference and make a change. Because I know a lot of young kids, don't really understand the power of their voice, whether it's their gift or their talent, or some people have the gift of speech, whatever gifts they have, or even just the life in them is enough to create something new, something different, something better than what they found it. And so for this process, I started with the forest, and I started with the background and worked my way forward, creating layers. I wanted to look as real as possible. I love detail, and I don't know if you can tell, but I love detail. And then from there, I painted the woman, and I wanted to show just the breath coming from her. I wanted to be obvious that there was kind of nothing behind her, to show that whatever is created was from her, that she has that power, and she knows she has that power, and she's cultivated that power to create a new world. And also, I found it very important to show a Black woman for, the future generations coming up, the Black little girls and even Black boys, or anyone who can resonate with this image, just that the importance of who we are, and that you can do anything. When it's very important when you see someone like you in a powerful position, it reminds you that you can achieve that as well. And so that's really why I wanted to make sure it was a Black woman. And of course, I used green tones because I wanted to give a nod to nature, because I love nature and growth, and obviously it fits with the park. And I put the hummingbird in there, as I use it in a lot of my work. Most of my work either has a hummingbird or a butterfly, and it represents doing the impossible, doing what you think is impossible, achieving hard obstacles, and doing them with a flair, because hummingbirds have this rare ability that hasn't yet been duplicated. They've been studied, and their flight is something that's amazing and magical. And even when I first moved out to California, hummingbirds, they would just come up to me and stare at me in the face for a few seconds from like a couple feet away. And I'm just like, okay, that's definitely touching to me. And it left an impression on me, just the magic and the ability that they have. Also, I use acrylic on a wood panel for this piece. And I think it's all for me.
So I think we've lost you. Are you still speaking?
I'm not. Can you hear me?
Yes. So are you finished?
You can hear me?
Sort of. So we can't hear you now if you're speaking, but I would just want to thank you. Beautiful. All these are beautiful. Thank you for your words. And Stephen, can you continue on?
Yes.
Sure. Next, Tiffany Conway. Tiffany Conway is the 2020 Are the African Diaspora Artistic Achievement Award winner. She's also the creator of Project Free. And Tiffany Conway.
Hi, everyone. So my piece is called Reluctant Paradise. And I tend to work very intuitively. So I will find a subject, and then typically I'll kind of narrow in on their, on their face, and then just kind of work very intuitively to kind of figure out the rest. And I was also inspired by, I can't think of the name of the image, but there's a statue, an ancient Egyptian statue of a king and a queen and a couple. And the way that they're presented in the statue is that they're both kind of holding each other up. More so the woman supporting the man. So I decided to kind of flip that over. And I call it Reluctant Paradise, just because with everything that we have come to know about our history in this country, we want to move forward and be hopeful, but then also to be mindful of everything that has happened to our community. So I was inspired to kind of inscribe some things into the leaves. And a lot of it is just talking about, things that I feel like would humanize us a little bit more in the eyes of this country. And it's really about peace and, having the freedom to make mistakes, which I think is super big. A lot of what we have seen has just been, children being children, and it's, being perceived as a threat, or, someone being, more inquisitive or being a little bit more defensive than normal. And that's perceived as a threat when really they're just, protecting themselves. So I inscribed a bunch of those things into the leaves. And part of the reason why I use their skin tone in blue is I really enjoy kind of playing around with skin tones so that people can look past, can kind of look past Blackness or look past, brownness, and just kind of see it for what it is. And when I was done with the piece, like the choices of the colors really reminded me actually of like a postcard. So that also kind of helped with the naming of the painting as well.
Thank you, Tiffany. That was really wonderful to hear. Stephen, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay.
All right. So I'd like to introduce you to Andrea McCoy Harvey. Andrea has dedicated her career to education. She's an East Bay teacher. She has a nonprofit called Makita Queen Art Academy that focuses on teaching our youth about the entrepreneurship of being an artist. Andrea also has work at the DeYoung Museum currently at the show right now. And I introduced you, Andrea McCoy Harvey.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. All right, so the name of my piece is called The Tree of Hope. There we are. And I typically do not use acrylics, so this is one of my first acrylic pieces. I'm normally a pastel artist, and this is also my first public art piece as well. And so as you see here, there's a lot of symbolism with my piece, starting with the tree. And I chose a tree because the strength of a tree and how it's rooted, and the hands in the tree represent the branches. And so there's different ethnicities with the hands and the branches. I'm a little nervous here. Sorry. And then I've also included water. So you see water at the bottom, and there's silhouettes of a woman's face facing upward. That also represents the souls of our ancestors that were lost coming here to America, to the United States. And if you look closely, you can see that the mouth is partially opened, and the sun is kind of radiating from the silhouette of the woman's face. And so the yellow and the orange represents the sun and you know, the sunbeams. And if you look further into the tree, there is a little bit of detail, and that represents our future, our children. The red represents the blood of the people that were lost due to racism or some type of, you know, brutality. And I chose to make this piece abstract. I tend to use a lot of line work with my artwork, and that's pretty much it.
Thank you. That was wonderful. I'm going to unmute Stephen in case. Wait. Can't seem to do that. Stephen, can you unmute yourself?
I think I have I? There we go. All right. And I want to make sure do I have Ashlei here? Because she was having some technical difficulties earlier.
Yes, I am here.
Okay. So I'd like to introduce Ashlei Reign. Ashlei is a public speaker, a world traveler. She's an internationally known hip hop artist. She is the daughter of renowned Bay Area artist Nanette Harris Jones. And she also has several Bay Area mural credits to her name. Ashlei Reign.
Can you guys hear me? Awesome. First, I want to say thank you to Rhythmix, the City of Alameda, and Stephen Bruce specifically for choosing me and the rest of the artists to be a part of this project. I am super grateful and excited, especially after hearing Rashid's presentation about the history of this park. So with my piece, I want to start off with the background, because I feel like our background highlights our foreground. I mean that literally and figuratively. So like whatever you come from, wherever you come from, I feel like we are the sum total of our life experiences. And so I wanted to use a background color that had some meaning. So when I look up the word or the color turquoise or teal, the words that come up are refreshing, feminine, calming, sophisticated, energy, wisdom, serenity, wholeness, creativity, emotional balance, good luck, spiritual grounding, friendship, love, joy, tranquility, patience, intuition, loyalty, and it is a revitalizing and rejuvenating color. So I wanted to be able to display and depict that type of energy in what's formerly known as Jackson Park, so it could be the background of whatever the foreground of that park and vision is. I chose to kind of go with the theme of creating our future and kids being symbolic or kind of representing our future. I chose to use a child. I chose to use a child that I know personally, who is an artist. This young lady, her name is Lisa, and she is also a painter. So she loves to paint. Her mother takes her to different murals around Oakland. And so I wanted to be able to paint her, for one, so that a child can see themselves and have a forever story. So like forever, she will be able to say, you know, at one point someone painted me on a mural or an art installation, and that will be a forever story. It doesn't just affect her life, but it affects the lives of whomever she tells. Also, with kids representing our future, they look up to us to create that for them. So while they grow up to be our future, it's up to us to be that. And so the symbols above her head, which mean be positive and love more, is the message that I wanted to send, and also the title of this image, which is acrylic on wood panel. I believe that if we are more positive and we show more love, we give the kids a vision and something to look forward to, which ultimately will create a beautiful future and just make, bring life to the park and to us and whomever visits it. So again, I'm super thankful and grateful for the opportunity, and I thank all of you guys for being a part of this. And I look forward to seeing it in person.
Thank you, Ashley. That was just so great. Stephen, can you take over here?
There we go. I'm trying not to tear up because all these artists are amazing, and I knew they all project a wonderful story in their work. But to hear them articulate about their pieces and their process, and how eloquently they speak of their work, makes me proud, and I don't know that I could have done a better job of picking a group of artists. And so I want to thank each one of them for believing in me. And I say that because each one of these artists create work, and they sell work for thousands of dollars. And so to create work with the vision of creating a better future in a public space, so people could, most importantly, experience the work and possibly a better future, absent the monetary consideration that they normally get. Is, like I said, I just want to thank them and for having faith in me, and I want to thank them for articulating their vision so eloquently.
I'd like to thank you and all the artists, because I don't think you could have picked a better group than the work that is together is stellar. And I hope that everyone on this call will have the opportunity, or make the opportunity at your earliest convenience, to go to the park and see it. It's at the corner of Encinal and Park Avenue. It's just a block off of Park Street, and it's amazing. I've already been to see it twice since it was installed, and it's so inspiring and so beautiful. And hearing your stories makes it that much more poignant and moving. And then hearing Rashid's history of the park to boot, I mean, it makes me so proud that we had this opportunity to come together in this moment and to really share this very momentous work at this time with everyone in the city of Alameda and beyond. I want to once again just take a moment to thank the city of Alameda, and specifically Amy Wooldridge and the Department of Recreation and Parks, for reaching out to Rhythmix to be their partner in this project. And I want to thank Mark Ribot, I think you're out there somewhere, and Janet and Jennifer and everyone on the Rhythmix staff and all of the artists involved with this project. It's amazing how quickly it came together, and you all just really rose so much higher than what I ever could have expected or imagined that this could be. It's really beautiful and so moving. And I just want to thank you again. So bravo.
And are there any questions that anyone has for either the artists or Rashid or John, for that matter?
Can you hear me, Janet? Do I need to unmute myself?
You're good.
I want to thank Rashid for his presentation. It was interesting because I did part of my research was to try to figure out the myth of what I heard growing up, about Alameda versus, what's truly the history of racism or profiling. And so, and of course, everything I researched, his name came up in almost most of the stories that I read about. It's funny because I just turned 60 this year, and we still talk about when we go to the movies, if we decide to go to the movies in Alameda, there's this thing is, will we get pulled over before we leave Alameda? And so this project really brought all that to the forefront. Like, this isn't my experience. This is more than my experience. And this is probably the reason for this experience. And so it's really exciting to see people in Alameda who are focusing on changing, that reality. And so I wanted to thank Rashid for all the research that he's done and the research that's been out there that I was able to look at and read. So thank you.
I see a hand up. Gwen, you can just unmute yourself and speak.
I grew up in Alameda, so I know Jackson Park well. And because this presentation was called Rename Jackson Park, I thought the surprise at the end of the program would be the name that was chosen, or even the candidates running. So anyway, I enjoyed the exhibit. It was wonderfully done. I'll be sure and stop by and see it. And if you don't have the answer, well, I have to wait a little longer. Thank you.
John, do you want to speak to that?
Quite honestly, back to Mr. Bruce's comment, I think Rashid would actually be better positioned because he's actually on the committee that has been soliciting names and whatnot. I don't know. I know you don't speak on behalf of the entire committee, Rashid, but Rashid knows kind of the process. I believe they're hoping to have, well, let me see if he wants to jump in. Everything I'm going to tell you is what I actually heard from Rashid during our technical run through on Wednesdays.
Right on. Well, first, let me just say thank you, Stephen. I appreciate that. And unfortunately, some myths are reality. As far as the renaming and the selection of the name, I just first want to say I think the process of renaming sometimes can be more transformative than the actual outcome. And so this being a part of that process, I'm grateful for that. The committee has been meeting since, I guess, September, and this past week went through a list of names that should be presented to the public soon. So we haven't, I don't think we have any agreement on when it's being released. There is a plan to have a public forum, and some committee members are working on that. And I'm not sure of the date. One of the last conversations was the 23rd. What I can share is that I put a link in the chat for the Instagram and the Facebook page for Rename Jackson Park, the collective, and we put out information there. Now that's independent from the renaming committee, which I'm also on. So, and then shout out all the folks who are on the committee that are here, as well as the Rename Jackson Park folks who signed petitions, spoke at City Council, who are also present. Yeah, so I don't have an answer for
Janet. I just also wanted to reflect. I saw her pop up in the chat. I hadn't seen her in the list when I looked, but Director Woolridge is actually here as well, and I just wanted to acknowledge and share my appreciation for it. We did not say go find amazing artists to do amazing work for this. We said find something to do with this space. When I found out about this project, it was incredible, but I wanted to give her great appreciation for myself, and I'm confident the rest of our council for helping to make this happen so fast, and to you, Rhythmix, as well. And I just, since I guess I am speaking on behalf of the city and the council, Mr. Bruce, I want to reflect and acknowledge your comments. We are, as a community, very aware of what you discuss about the thought process you go through in visiting our city, and have a very large process as well that is underway that I'm not going to get into on this, to discuss how we can, how we can be better, how we can make sure that we live up to everybody belongs here. And that means not just the residents, but our community outside of the boundaries of our city, so that we can enjoy. I mean, these artworks are amazing, and it breaks my heart. And I know that sounds twee, and I'm sorry, but I do want to reflect it. To hear that we could be missing out, right, on each other because of some of these historical and continuing practices. So thank you for sharing that.
Any more thoughts or comments from Pam Chang? You're muted. Unmute yourself, or I can.
You can hear me now, right?
Yes.
Okay. My name's Pam Chang, and I am the chair of Alameda Education Foundation's Art Across the Island. I do work with Rhythmix or partner with them. First of all, Rashid, thank you so much. I have spent 18 years in a mid-island grade school. I am so glad it is now called Love. Thank you, thank you. It's like a weight was lifted off those kids. I saw the mural 2 days ago. I couldn't believe it. Just is so beautiful. It's a perfect fit for that strip of land. And to hear all of the young women who worked on the art, I'm just so happy. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Pam. Anybody else would like to share, speak?
There's actually a question in the chat asking, will copies of the work be available for sale to the public? That was something that we didn't actually talk to the artists about.
I think originally we talked about the artwork would be available for the artist to be able to market if it survived the elements. And so I would imagine that if they messaged either Rhythmix or the artist directly, they might be able to figure out how that could possibly happen in the future. I wanted to, something I didn't do was that all these artists, you can find them Instagram, probably on Facebook, except for Abi. And but seek them out on social media and see what they're doing, because each one of them are doing really exciting things right now. And I really think you're gonna hear a lot more about them in the very near future. And so please seek them out on their social media handles.
Gwen, you had a question. Do you want to unmute yourself?
I just wanted to make a comment that I graduated from hate school. How many years ago? So love is okay. Better than hate, right?
Marvin Gaye said only love can conquer hate.
As Thierry Odabi says, love trumps hate. Thank you, Thierry.
Okay, well, if there's nothing else that people want to add, I
wanted to say one more thing. Sorry. I neglected to mention, if you guys want to see Lisa, the child that I painted, her mother took her to visit the art installation and sent a video of her looking at herself, and I posted it on Facebook. So you guys feel free to go to my Facebook page and see her looking at herself.
That's great. Okay.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all again so much. We're just so excited to have this work up and in Alameda. It will be there until the end of April, everybody. So come back repeatedly, visit it, bring your friends, tell your friends. It's on the website at rhythmix.org as well. And do visit all the artists' websites individually as well. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Rashid and Vice Mayor John Knox White. We're very grateful for everybody's words of wisdom and just sharing all of your thoughts with us today. And thank you all for being here.